Hello and welcome to Chapter 15. Chapter 15 talks about diversity training. It's a very interesting topic and very important in organizations today due to the change in demographics in the workplace. There are a lot more women and minorities in the workforce than ever before, and organizations have a great opportunity to take this diversity and be better able to solve problems and have a competitive advantage. But to do that, it has to be managed, and part of managing diversity is providing training to employees. So we're going to talk about that and some of the problems one can experience with diversity. So a culture is a set of shared values, beliefs, and norms and artifacts used to interpret the environment as a guide for behavior. So when we talk about culture, it could be the culture of a particular country or a particular group. So different things cultures have in common could be a geographic area, a race, a language, a religious faith, food preferences, special interests in regards to politics, anything like that that kind of groups people together. So an organizational culture is a set of shared values, beliefs, norms, artifacts, and patterns of behavior that are used as a frame of reference for the way one looks at, attempts to understand, and works within an organization. So what we mean by artifacts are material and non-material objects that communicate information about the organization. It can be things like the furnishings in a place, pictures on the wall, can be how decisions are made, stories that people tell, different ceremonies that occur, leadership styles. Those are all artifacts of culture in an organization. Patterns of behavior refer to something that helps to reinforce the organization's assumption, beliefs, and ways of doing things. And so, as we talked before, socialization is important when it comes to culture. And socialization is the process by which new members learn how to function in a new group or organization and how they get indoctrinated into the culture of the organization. So we've talked about how the labor market is changing, and even though there are a lot more women and people of color in the workforce, there's still a lot of discrimination. Okay, so we kind of just briefly want to talk about that. Different types of discrimination. Access discrimination occurs when an organization places limits on job availability. They do things like restrictive advertising and recruitment. They'll reject diverse applicants. They offer diverse applicants a lower salary. So there are barriers to access in the organization. Treatment occurs after a person's hired and takes the form of limiting opportunities or outright discrimination once somebody's in the workplace. Some issues regarding treatment discrimination against women. The women have made considerable progress moving into what was once male-dominated occupations like medicine, law, management, and engineering, and so forth. There still are some issues, and we're going to talk about a couple of those, and a little bit later we'll talk about some more issues that affect women. But one issue is sexual harassment, and there's many forms of sexual harassment. It could be that there are unwanted off-color jokes and comments, outright unwanted sexual propositions and touching, offer of job rewards in exchange for sexual favors. Those are all forms of sexual harassment. So sexual harassment, there are two types. One is called quid pro quo, and quid pro quo is where the employee's subjection to or rejection of sexual conduct is the basis for an employment decision. So in other words, if someone's boss says to them, if you go to Houston with me for the weekend, I'll give you that promotion. That would be quid pro quo. Quid pro quo is Latin meaning something for something. Okay, the other type is hostile environment, and this is just where things that are going on in the environment cause somebody to be very uncomfortable. And though it's not directly linked to an employment decision, it still is illegal because it's affecting that person and their comfort in the workplace, and ultimately affects their job performance. There's also some issues with treatment of minorities in organizations, and this is primarily a lack of promotional opportunities and incidents of racial harassment. Historically, minorities have had difficulty moving into key executive and policy-making positions, okay, as well as being subjected to racial harassment. So, equal opportunity employment is defined as the right to obtain jobs and earn rewards in them regardless of non-job related factors. So what this is, it's a series of laws. Title VII of the Equal Employment Opportunity Act of 1963 is the main act, followed by many other acts that protect different things. But basically, what all these laws say is that it's unlawful for employers to make employment decisions on the basis of race, color, sex, religion, national origin, age, mental or physical handicap, Vietnam era, disabled American veteran status, and pregnancy. Okay, unless these factors can be shown to be job related. So it's protection for people. We call it the protected class. Okay, and glass ceiling refers to an invisible boundary that prevents women and minorities from advancing to senior management levels. And there are just subtle attitudes and prejudices that block women and minorities from upward mobility, particularly in management type positions. So many organizations establish programs to facilitate the recruitment and retention of qualified women and minorities. The inclusion of women and minorities and other underrepresented groups has made organizations more culturally diverse. And by cultural diversity, we mean the existence of two or more persons from different cultural groups in any single group or organization. And some of these approaches, the book discusses three of them. The first is affirmative action. And this is a controversial program that came about in 1965 after the Civil Rights Act was passed. President Johnson at the time felt that that didn't do enough to correct the situation of discrimination. So he, through an executive order 11246, established affirmative action, saying that organizations who are government contractors with $10,000 or more business with the government, or subcontractors, have to have a plan. They have to look at their workforce every year and determine how their workforce compares to the population in general. And in areas where women or minorities are underrepresented, they have to come up with a plan to try to bring those numbers up to match the population. And the reason it's so controversial is that when a certain group is underutilized, meaning that there aren't enough women or minorities to reflect the population, preferential treatment is often given to people applying for jobs in those particular occupations. So you can see where there would be sort of some issues with this. The next one is valuing differences. And valuing differences is about awareness-based diversity training. And this is where an environment's created in which each person's cultural differences are respected. And these trainings kind of vary in how they do them. The next category, managing diversity, is a more comprehensive managerial process for developing an environment or culture that works for all employees. It's all about inclusion, that everyone's included, everyone feels comfortable and welcome, everyone's able to do their job free from harassment, free from discrimination. So it focuses on building a positive environment and full use of the workforce. We talked before about globalization and how globalization is becoming more and more an issue in organizations now. And globalization has resulted in more individuals being given expatriate assignments. That's where someone goes to work in another country, as well as people from other countries come to work in our country. So organizations are now providing training to these people going to these other countries, called cross-cultural training, to prepare them for their assignments, because if they didn't do that, it would be very difficult to go to a foreign country where things are so different and to be able to get along with people and the people you work with. So training is given to try to make people at least aware of the major cultural differences. Okay, so it raises awareness of these differences, focuses on attitudes, provides factual information about the culture, builds skills in language and nonverbal communication. The book gives a lot of examples of different things that maybe we say or do that other cultures find offensive. So it's good to know these things when you go to do business in another country or with diverse people coming, into your business. So there's several different programs for culturally diverse employees. So if we hire culturally diverse employees, it's very important that we have these programs for them as well as people they'll be working with. Because if the organization doesn't support diversity, we could hire all the diverse people we want, but they won't stay, they won't feel comfortable. So programs EHRD develop can be very helpful in that. For instance, we talked before about socialization and orientation. When new employees come in, and if diverse employees are coming in, they may feel isolated when their cultural differences sort of prevent them from obtaining interesting work assignments or communicating with other people and that sort of thing. So socialization, orientation, onboarding is very important. Career development is important. Programs that promote valuing differences and managing diversity can be useful in creating sort of a positive career advancement climate. We talked about mentoring a few chapters ago, and mentoring minorities and women can be very important in retention and job satisfaction. Sexual and racial harassment training can be very helpful, especially if we're trying to change the culture to one of more acceptance and inclusion. But that requires a lot of work. And the book talks about there are different steps that EHRD can take. You have to prepare a policy and procedure. You have to assess the climate. We want to know what's going on, and kind of like a needs assessment to determine what needs to be done to support diversity and diverse people coming into the organization. Training programs need to be developed. These training programs need to describe laws and review the organizational policies and discuss what happens when there are problems, where people can go, and that sort of thing. So it can be very helpful to people dealing with diverse people as well as new people coming into the organization. Well, that's those are the high points from Chapter 15 on diversity, training, and beyond. I hope you found this interesting. I think it's a great area for HRD people to become involved in because it has a lot of impact on organizations and the trends today. Thank you.